Hello, my name is Lori Farney. I am a candidate for the Master of Multisensory Teaching. I am a late in life teacher. Been married to my best friend for 26 years. We have two beautiful daughters, Erin and Elizabeth. We also have a brand new 10-week-old puppy. And I am very blessed in my life. I've been given gifts that are immeasurable. My favorite way to enjoy my life is to spend time with my family and friends. Anywhere I can get near salt water is always the best place. Love puppies and dogs and enjoy spending time in my Jeep. As I began teaching and got further into a teaching career, it became obvious to me that there was a need in secondary for students who still struggle with reading. I didn't have any background in special education or learning disabilities, either personally or in education, but a student was placed in my life who most teachers had written off, weren't willing to waste time on anymore. And about the time that I sat in a meeting and learned that this student couldn't read, and it all kind of became clear that that could be very well what the problem was, I was asked by my principal to consider going through the training to be a dyslexia therapist. It felt like God was knocking on my door, literally tapping me on the shoulder. So I began my journey at the Shelton School, and after receiving my CALT certification, decided to take it to the next level. The reading and research I had done wasn't enough. I wanted a little more, wanted a lot more. And DBU provided me a Christ-centered graduate level education with teachers at the highest level of their professions. Every instructor, professor, and teacher that I've had has real world experience. And I am old enough to know that there is no better teacher than experience. So thankfully, I've been blessed with teachers who are willing to share that experience and the knowledge gained from it. My personal philosophy of education is what led me to become a teacher. I don't believe any student or adult or child should ever say, oh, I'm just bad at math, reading, writing, science, whatever. And I feel like if we teach children correctly in the way they need to be taught, then this is not an issue. And that's kind of my personal mission. I think children need to be seen and heard, and I don't think we often listen to them enough. They need to feel respected and that they are safe and welcomed and that they matter. And that's pretty much what I teach my students in my classroom. Every student has something to give, and they are capable of so much more than they even have an inkling about. So in my classroom, my students are thrilled to learn that I only have one rule. And I am thrilled that only one rule can encompass everything they need and that I need to help make them successful. So we spend much of the year discussing being respectful. And of course, we do talk about being respectful to others. We talk about being respectful of the learning environment. This is not an idea they are real familiar with in some cases. And yet, the learning environment is a gift, and they don't have the right to take it away from others or themselves. We talk about respecting materials, and we spend quite a bit of time talking about respecting yourself. This is an area of respect I think many, many young people don't even know to consider. I explain to my children that the respect is not an option, that it is not going to be easy, but it will be worth it. We spend time explaining to them that they are not stupid and that no matter how they have been made to feel in the past, there is no reason that they need to feel that way anymore. And I am passionate about the fact that my students are in my life for a reason. I believe that God has placed each child and adult in my life right now in this place for a specific reason. And I take the responsibility of honoring that reason very, very seriously. If you want to hear more about my story or read more about my story of getting into education and my philosophy about education, you can click the link. One of the things I love teaching to reading challenged students and dyslexics in particular is derivatives. Learning to read derivatives can increase vocabulary and comprehension, obviously. Breaking words into simplified reading parts is something that dyslexics don't consider and love finding out about. And there are predictable patterns, and those patterns can be very valuable to someone without a lot of reading confidence. We know that the more they know about morphology, then the more they're going to comprehend what they read. So this slide is actually a link to an actual lesson where we review what a base word is. We learn what a vowel and consonant suffix are. We talk about derivatives and how to spell derivatives. I do explain to them that just like everything else, you have to take things one step at a time. And there's only one way to eat an elephant, one bite at a time, and that is a poster in my classroom. I have another poster in my classroom that describes or that lists all of the prefixes, roots, and changing forms and base words that my students will come into contact with. And this is something we refer to often as they build their own words. And then this activity is something that often goes home with students after several lessons so that they can share their learning with those in their homes. It's a great way to get them to review, but also allows them to practice both written and verbal and visual derivative building. Students will decide if the ED says ed, t, or d. And of course, at the bottom of the page, I do provide a little resource so that they have something to use as a backup so they don't have to guess. This is something that I believe firmly in, that teaching students that not only will they be able to read the words, but we also focus on the meanings. And so unlike their counterparts in class who may not be dyslexic, they will be able to read these words, but they will have an additional benefit in understanding meaning of the words. And that just makes all the difference. Many students with dyslexia have much lower vocabulary than anyone of their peers. And no middle school student has a large enough vocabulary because they don't read enough. So the good old school dictionary is still necessary, even with all the technology. When they are taking state testing like the STAR, they have access to a dictionary. So we do a long, deep dive into the dictionary that incorporates learning what the uses are. Everything from meanings of words, grammatical information, spelling, antonyms and synonyms, plural forms, past tense, English translations for my non-English speaking natives, and of course, how to reading the word in a sentence, which is always as helpful as a definition. We start out talking about how words have no power until we combine them, which is a quote from Nathaniel Hawthorne that I really, really like. The first lesson that I begin with is a trick. I show my students that they can give me any word and that I will, using nothing more than my thumbs and just the corners of the pages, open the dictionary to the exact page that the word is on. I let them do a little detective work and quiz me several times to try to figure out how I do the trick. And then I introduce quartiles. We talk about the vocabulary of quartile. We talk about what it sounds like. I have as much discovery for them as possible, and we tie it to things they know, such as the dollar bill, liquids, quarts and gallons, and we talk about football games. We next move into actual dictionaries where the students will put tabs at the beginning of the four quartiles, and this resource is available to them digitally so that they can go home and do it again. I even had one student go in and teach her English teacher this strategy. We then put the dictionaries away and focus on really identifying what letter is in each quartile. This is something that we may do for a couple of days. I teach them the Angry Elephants Madly Stomp mnemonic. color code the alphabet for them, and we have the numbers, of course, on the quartile in the beginning. We move next into finding which quartile a letter is in, which quartile a guide word is in, or a target word, and then what guide words are on the page would come later on. As we move through this activity, they begin to do some independent practice, and their goal is to discover if a target word is on the same page as the guide words or not. And this was created again as a digital resource so that every day they can just do one slide for bell work as review and practice. They simply write in the box yes or no. We don't take it any further than that for the first few days. And then, of course, eventually we will go to an activity where they determine is the target word on the previous, current, or next pages. I believe that if you can teach a student to use a book containing the information they need, then you are giving them some power. But when you think about a dyslexic who has a very limited understanding of many of the words they're needing to look up, and then you give them a book that's almost 1,000 pages full of words they probably think they can't read, it's overwhelming. So this use of dictionary skills is a valuable technique and worth the time. I have actually recently been asked to teach this to language and reading teachers in the coming months. Finally, as a former writing teacher, I enjoy teaching my second year students the Winston Grammar Program, which is like the old school diagramming sentences, but in a much more interactive and multisensory approach. We know that teaching grammar helps students in their own writing, allowing them to revise and edit more effectively. And we know that it makes them more robust writers when they have more language understanding. I have had to digitize some of these lessons due to remote learning, but I do have cards in my classroom for all of the students, and I have plenty of hands-on activities for them in this. One of the things I also have done is digitize it so that I can introduce one at a time the parts of speech. I have the front and back of the card so that my remote students can see exactly what we're seeing in class, and also so that I can demonstrate on the digital board as I need to. And then, of course, they have activities that they can do in class where they can physically move the cards, just like they would do on the ground or on the desk. And the students at home can do this also. Eventually, we do move to writing the information on the sentences. And of course, in class, that is done on paper. But for activities that we do together and for my remote students, this is something they can still participate in 100% fully. I love grammar. I love teaching grammar. And I do also provide a resource that allows students to see what the larger cards, which have the questions that they need to ask themselves to know where to begin. I actually have students who ask, can we play that word card game? And of course, as any educator knows, there is nothing quite as rewarding as having a student ask to learn. Having said that, one of my favorite service learning opportunities was a student who did just that. Frankie was a tragic story. He was a 7th grade student who was skateboarding home from his band concert here at the school at dusk when he was struck by a car. He suffered neck and brain injuries that had him hospitalized for months and months. Frankie had to learn to walk and talk and eat again. And when he finally was able to go back to his home, still wearing the halo, he immediately asked his mom when he could return to school. Of course, she was terrified at the prospect, and his medical professionals agreed with her that a crowded middle school was probably not the best place for a boy with a halo still through his head. So she reached out and asked for a volunteer teacher. I was able to take up that opportunity to spend 3 afternoons a week with Frankie. This taught me more about multisensory teaching than anything I think I've ever seen. All the research in the world is not as good as hands-on experience. And while Frankie struggled to remember teachers, friends, simple words, and often when we would go through a math or a science lesson, he would look at me like he had never heard of what I was talking about. And yet when I would put a pencil in Frankie's hand, the math calculations just happened. The sentence writing just happened. So while he struggled with verbalizing what he knew, he was able to just do it. And he couldn't exactly explain his math problems at this point, but we did work hard. And his biggest concern was that he was able to go on and be promoted to the 8th grade. And ultimately that did happen. And Frankie is now a high school student doing very well and no longer wears a halo. There are simpler ways to provide for our students for their basic needs. I'll never forget the look on Miss Lily's face when she walked up to myself and another teacher and said, "I'm so embarrassed. My pants fell down when I was walking in the hall and people saw." And it was heartbreaking. Middle school students have plenty of social and emotional challenges when everything is fine. And Lily shared with us that her pants wouldn't button, her others were dirty, and she was wearing mom's clothes. A quick phone call to our campus social worker, and she was in a private shopping trip upstairs in the clothing closet that we've all had the opportunity to donate to. Having 2 daughters, I understand the importance of feeling that you look good or that you look acceptable in social situations at school. And so, of course, all of their clothes that they are ready to get rid of go to the school clothing closet. I highly recommend that you donate to a local school if you have children. And this is more valuable for their self-esteem than you could possibly know. I ended up in middle school because of the opportunity to teach a confirmation class at my church. And that's the 3rd service learning you see there. A picture of me with some students. This was an eye-opening experience. Nobody liked middle school. Nobody likes middle schoolers on some days. But I saw the heart of these students, and we were there early on Sunday mornings. So a few donut bribes and some VeggieTales videos helped get the eyes and the brains open and going. And these students spent 3 years delving into their baptisms and the beliefs behind them, and ultimately wrote statements of faith and confirmed their baptism. And that was a very rewarding experience. Additionally, I was able to go on local and out-of-state mission trips with these students. And while they had challenges and they had plenty of insecurities, they opened their hearts and they worked and they helped others. And they were so giving and loving that it taught me that this is a very special age. And I definitely made a decision that this is the age of people that I want to be involved with and that I wanted to teach. Teaching has been a little difficult this year. We always want to provide the absolute best for our students, and I work for a district that does that wholeheartedly. They all are given a laptop at the beginning of the school year, starting in 3rd grade. So our students do have one-to-one access, but to fulfill the potential of that, our students also need internet access. And one of the ways that my district committed to do that is, as of last March, they had just installed the 3rd Wi-Fi tower in the school district, allowing 94% of our students access to free internet at home. Having said that, we were in a very good position when the pandemic hit and the school buildings closed. We spent very little time catching up and converting lessons, and this allowed us to deliver lessons. How I was going to deliver multisensory lessons led me to Jamboards, where students could completely interact as physically as possible. Uh, Jamboards gave me the opportunity to allow students to manipulate pieces, as you've seen, to write, to type. I could insert pictures to give them the full pictures that we would use in class. They can interact completely. As you can see, there's even scribbles. And they can code on the words, and I can put their little initials. The best part is I can see what they're doing. They can see what I'm doing. I can give instant feedback and correction if necessary. And the students are able to completely participate in the lesson. The second thing that was important was seeing them and hearing them. And so Google Meets has been instrumental in that. We have online classes, and I am able to let my students see and hear each other. I can record lessons. This was an opportunity that a sample lesson where I introduced them to digital books available through our school library, and we actually did an activity with the books. This picture is kind of fun. It was my students in person interacting with my students remotely by by somehow flipping their cameras, and they were acting as if they were on a roller coaster. If you notice on the screen, they are hanging upside down. Lastly, Canvas, our campus student management system, has allowed me to give students complete access to any information they need, real-time lessons, access to the Google Meets for a live meeting, their entire bell schedule. This is available to parents, previous lessons, and any other resources they might need. And they can click directly to any lesson they need to get to. I am certified as an ESL generalist for EC through 8. I am also certified to teach technology applications. And of course, I am an academic language therapist. I have also had the opportunity to be a yearbook advisor, start a computer science course here at school and help with the curriculum for that. I have been known to be a cheer coach when that has become a necessity. Not a passion of mine, but the girls who needed a coach are definitely a passion. And last year, I had the opportunity to lead a class of students to create a daily video announcement called the Roar Report. And that was a definite learning experience where we learned how to help each other as we all learn together. Those students are the people I need to thank the most, but also my family for being so supportive. And DBU, this has been a crazy, crazy time. And DBU has been a haven and a place of peace, a place of comfort, place of collaboration and camaraderie. And I am forever grateful. I need to thank Dr. Baker, who has been available and a guiding force through my entire process of my master's program. Dr. Laurie Ames from the Shelton Diagnostic Center has been fabulous in her intense training, sharing her giant binder with us, and has been a resource in my own career as well. Chris Biedenbaugh was my first instructor at the Shelton School in teaching dyslexia therapy. And while there were days when we had no idea how this was all going to come together, it did, and she was a fabulous instructor. Nancy Kaufman has been my instructor for my therapy level and also my continuing progress here at DBU. And most importantly, I want to thank Jeannie Johnson. She has been a guiding light, an inspiration in this final semester of my classes with real life strategies and uplifting devotionals. And she is just really an inspiration. And I am so thrilled to have had an opportunity to be in her class. If you have any more questions about me, send me an email. And thank you for taking the time to watch my information.